business, or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Truelytics, the one and only comprehensive advisor transition management platform. This week on the show, Pepper Anderson, President and CEO of Chilton Trust, is with me for a fascinating conversation about a range of topics that are critical to the modern financial advisory firm. We begin our chat by talking about industry consolidation trends and then dive into the need for individual advisors and RIA firms to embrace technology solutions that will help them scale their business in response to fee compression and a whole host of other changing landscape dynamics. And of course, we'll hit on some fun stuff as well. This is a fantastic episode. You are going to love Pepper. Before we get to the show, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest for the show, please feel free to hit us up, podcast@truelytics.com, or swing by truelytics.com and use a contact form, or heck, you can find us on the socials as well. Truelytics is everywhere. I'm at Mike Langford, basically everywhere. Really easy to find. All right, let's get to our conversation with Pepper Anderson. Well, Pepper Anderson, it's so wonderful to see you this morning. Welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. This is great. So I love the fact when we get on with a guest and the chemistry is like immediately there, and you and I have like some similar life experiences going on. We're talking about adventures of being parents of teenagers right before we clicked record and so forth. So I think, we're revved up and ready to go here. I'm thrilled to have you on the show because we're going to be tackling some things that are of particular interest, not only to me, but specifically for this audience, right? The Truelytics audience for the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. I always introduce the show as, Truelytics is a comprehensive advisor transition management platform, right? And we've been talking about this wave of transition happening, and we're going to be diving into a bunch of different facets of that here today. And what caught my eye when Caroline, your PR team, a member of your PR team, reached out, she mentioned that, Pepper can really talk about all the trends that are happening in industry consolidation. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Let's go, right? This is going to be fantastic. So you seem to have some unique perspectives on this wave of M&A activity that we've seen in recent years. And I thought we just dive in right there. What is your outlook for what we might see in the next year or so as it comes to M&A activity?
I think my baseline view probably isn't hugely unique because I think we all see the original drivers of what sparked this whole trend, and they're still there. There's digitization and scale efficiency. The margin expansion opportunities, if you're a buyer, are super real, and that hasn't changed. It maybe has gotten more true in a post-COVID market lift kind of environment. And if you're a seller, valuations are super high, really attractive. Market run has added to your valuation. And if you're a buyer, I think the margins are still richer than basically any place else in the financial world. And you can borrow easily and at an attractive rate. So the wind is at your back on that, particularly if you're a private equity buyer and you're sitting on a lot of cash. This feels like a great business. The part where I maybe see it a little differently is relative to my business and what I'm trying to achieve, which isn't an exit strategy. And I worry, just given my own background as an advisor, that as we're all concentrating on the trends and the financial outcomes for the buyer and the seller, we don't always have in mind what's best for the advisors themselves and for the clients they serve. So that is more of a debate, I think, between M&A and organic growth.
Yeah.
If you're the acquiree.
No, it's 100% true, right? If you're you're considering your options, right? If you're an advisor, okay, so do I continue to grow my business as it is? But as you said, you look at the landscape and you're like, well, it's getting kind of frothy there. So prices are going up, but it's also never been easier to go get the capital to acquire another business, right? That there are actual lenders out there now, whereas they weren't, by the way, less than 10 years ago. it was going to be seller finance, right? That advisor or that team was going to be like, okay, we're going to take back a note. Well, we'll take a deposit of 25, 30% or whatever, and we'll have some sort of earn out thing. And that's not there today, but you're pointing out some, I think some of the really important things here. Let's talk about the clients a little bit more, right?
Yeah. I think it's easy for a client to feel left behind when it's clear that it's not about them. And so when you think about some of the benefits of technology and all that, that clearly does benefit clients, but I haven't seen people going out and talking about it. It's more of a cultural kind of jamming together. Sometimes the platforms are run separately and the timeline is clear. Like, so I guess you have to be there for 2 or 3 years. And then what's going to happen? Am I going to be stuck with this new organization? And the larger organization, oftentimes we see management turnover, things like that can happen, and it changes the original vision. So I think it's even hard if you're the one selling your practice to be really confident that what you're creating in a generational or even in a 5-7 year kind of timeline, that what you're creating is going to look like what you have initially envisioned, just because businesses are dynamic and they change and everybody has a different perspective on what that should look like for their company.
And it's a really delicate balance, right? Of how to do this. It's not easy because, I say this all the time, and I'm not the only one who says this. I think it's common wisdom in this industry, is that this is a relationship-based business, right? The products and services and pricing are pretty much commoditized across the industry, right? We all have the same stocks, bonds, mutual funds available for our client portfolios. We all charge about the same price for the most part. We offer the same high-level suite of services, right? So it comes down to, I chose you, Pepper, as an advisor because something about you resonated with me, made me feel comfortable and confident about my financial future, that I'm in good hands with you. And when we get on the phone, I feel comfortable talking to you about my finances and all the other things that, like, by the way, my finances are either impact or are impacted by, many advisors can relate. You kind of have to be almost like a shrink, right? You almost have to be like a therapist, because there's a lot of emotional stuff in money. Yeah. Right. And it doesn't matter. Even if you're really rich, you have some emotional stuff about money. You've got some family relationships that are impacted by it. You may have some guilt that I have more money than other people. And, should I not? All sorts of craziness happens with people's brains.
It's so funny you say that, because I actually find myself sometimes wishing I had minored in psychology or something. And we look at all these young people that we're hiring out of college, and they're coming in with these ability to write great macros and they understand accounting. And I'm like, well, do you have the EQ? Do you understand the subtleties of people? And that's that stuff that's harder to teach. I feel like I could teach anybody Excel. Yeah. I can't necessarily teach you as much to be a great listener. And
I tell you what, one of the best compliments I ever had from somebody was our longest stop was like, they looked at me and said, Mike, you've got a really good bedside manner. And I'm like, and I'm not a doctor, but it made sense. It's like, oh, I get it, right? So my job is to make you feel comfortable and confident when in anything, right? And I'm not an active practicing advisor anymore, but I've taken that over the course of my career, and I really do apply it to everything. It's like, my job is to make you feel warm, comfortable, and confident in whatever it is we're doing. Like, so here, being a podcast host with you, I'm like, I want you to feel great about this type of experience. And you're right. I think you could teach your advisor population should be taught that a little bit more, right? Like, learn how to make people comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all focused so much on the IQ piece of it, which is for good reason. I mean, that's sort of the ticket to entry. Yeah. But the other part is usually the decision point for clients. You may not stay hired by a client if you lose your sensitivity or your EQ. You can probably withstand a little bit of up and down in performance. There's more forgiveness for that, and people expect to have some differing experiences. But one thing you were talking about earlier just reminded me how much time I think I think a lot of people should be spending on thinking through what they ascribe value to and what their clients do. So there's this whole commoditized part of the business. Yeah. So when I started, it was maybe like almost 30 years ago, information, whether it was world news, financial markets, performance of their portfolios, everything was controlled by the advisor.
Yeah.
We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the same access to databases where you could compare and contrast. And so that was a value right there before you did anything, made a single decision. Being the provider of knowledge was valuable. Now, your job is different. It's to help people synthesize and respond to it, because there's the opposite. There's too much information.
Right.
So you sit back and you think, like, what's commoditized and what's not? What can I decommoditize? And do my clients care about that? Because that's where I can charge people fees for it. It's where I can be chosen over another advisor. And that's the part I think that's changed a lot, even just in the last 5-7 years.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm so wonderful that you brought that up. It's, it's going back to kind of like the bedside manner, like doctor analogy. All of us, when you all of a sudden have something that doesn't feel right, like that thing hurts, or what's that mark on my arm, or whatever the thing is, right? Mm-hmm. You don't pick up the phone immediately and call the doctor like, hey, I got this thing. I need to see you immediately. It's, wait a minute, Google, WebMD, or whatever.
I've checked WebMD,
what is
and I've diagnosed myself.
So I've got some hype. I've got a range of, it's nothing to like, oh my God, I got to, like show the insurance. But I think the same is true here. And you outlined it, I think, so perfectly. Your clients, know how to use Google, right? They know how, there are all sorts of financial tools available. And this is going to be a great bridge to our next topic here. They know how to go get some information. So information is no longer scarce, right? And this industry, for the most of its history, was built on the scarcity of information. Like, we know,
right?
You don't. And by the way, we have the real-time data right now. If you remember, early in my career, so I've been in this industry since 1994 is when I was in college, and I was answering phones for mutual fund companies. And people used to call us to get the closing price of their fund, right? Sometimes they call and ask for, because I worked the 4 to midnight shift. I was a college student. That was great. But every night I would spend hours just answering the phone, like, oh, can you tell me the closing price of the Warburg Pincus blah, blah, blah fund? I'm like, okay, yeah, I closed at this. And now, obviously, if you tell a young person that, yeah, you used to have to pick up the phone and or wait till the next day in the newspaper to see what the price closed at, they're like, that's crazy, right? But that's the way it was. And now it's instant on my phone. At any moment of the time, I can see what the price of a fund or what the price of a stock is. That's, scarcity of information actually existed at one point in time, but now it's prevalent. And so it does occasionally.
You have to actually step back with somebody and understand what has that told someone their opinion is. So I think we also project the so what about some of the knowledge because of the expertise we have. And there is not necessarily one right answer. So question with potentially new clients that I always ask them is, just tell me about your experiences with other providers. What do you want to preserve because it works so well for you? And what are you trying to fix? Because by definition, if they're sitting with you, they're trying to fix something.
Right.
So what is that thing that's just not feeling right to you? Because it's probably not what I expected it. And I think too much we go into the pitch rather than stepping back and saying, like, what are you trying to get at here?
Yeah. I love that. Somebody else said something similar, like you're a problem solver or whatever. Everybody has a problem they want to solve. And it can be like, hey, listen, I want to make sure that I retire at 65 because there's a beach with my name on it or whatever it is. Like it can be that simple, or it can be like, there's so many things we have in our life that, like, if I don't achieve that, that's going to be considered a failure. And I'm going to be not happy with the lack of that outcome. Or if this negative outcome happens, I'm really going to be upset. Right.
Well, sometimes it's even more specific. I've sat with people and they're like, I hate this type of portfolio, or I would never do X. And I'm thinking, somebody just go rip out page 23 from all the books, and you'd hate to put your whole conversation forward with, this is the best way to do it, because you've already lost the person and they're just trying to count the minutes until it's not rude to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. It's interesting about it, like getting to that. It's almost getting to a values conversation, right? Like, so it's not only is it. We just had a conversation with ESG investing folks, and they were talking about that. Like some folks, this is a values based thing. It's like, yes, of course, I want to make money and I want my portfolio to grow, and I've got financial goals. But it's really important to me that I don't have any of my money in oil companies, as an example. Like I don't want to be there, right? And so, yeah, that's really important conversations. Shifting gears to this, and this is kind of related here. It is on this values, like your value as a financial advisor topic here. During our prep call, we talked about things like fee compression and the rapid advances in technology solutions like robo-advisory offerings. And you actually pointed out a more broader one just here, just information proliferation and how easy it is. It's nice and opaque, it's to be clear and transparent now. These are radically changing the playing field for financial advisors, right? As we kind of were hitting on it, like some people are like, I can DIY this thing. I don't need you, right? Or there's a fear that that's there. And of course, we're competing with some of these solutions that are basically free, right? So obviously, the primary response to these perceived types of threats to my business, if I'm working on fee revenue, is why don't you focus on scaling your business? Like you're going to have to get bigger, right? Because if prices are coming down, you either have to get more assets to make the same amount of money, and either from your existing client pools, like so you're going to have to get increased share of wallet. Or you have to bring on more clients, right? You have to, or find a way to serve smaller clients more profitably or whatever. But how are they supposed to do that, right? So one question that you posed, and I loved it. It was one of those, I'm writing this down, is what is the role of the financial advisor? And we started talking about this just a few minutes ago, but I want to dive in a little bit more. I think it offers a window into what might be the best approach for the modern financial advisor to scale their business. So what is the role of a financial advisor now that asset management and that type of stuff is starting to be like, I can have that done anywhere, right? I can have it done by any number of these robo-advisory offerings, and it's going to spit out like an asset allocation. So what do you think?
I don't really like the binary debate between robo-advising and technology, good or bad, and old school, good or bad. And the reality is that there's a place that combines old and new school, if you will. Like, so to me, I know that my clients expect to have some level of technology enabling and some self-service of at least information, if not more. So I have to give that to them. What I've tried to do is take that efficiency, it's bandwidth of just time when you're not you answering the phone saying the closing price was 5. And it's also the cost savings that I get through some of that scale. And how do I want to redeploy that? I don't necessarily need to put it in my pocket if I could redeploy it in a way that has even a higher ROI than that. So for example, I think about investing in people, like service, to make sure that clients have this white glove experience. And how much I do that, what the balance of those inputs are, I think really depends on the advisor and the client base they're trying to serve. Because if you're saying I'm going to give X number of minutes or hours or days to each client, to me, it's just basic math. How many clients do you need to get there? And it's your personal business plan. So I think everybody ought to have a business plan that's got a strategic vision to it, but that's really anchored in the here and now, and importantly, written in pencil. Because
like that,
whatever you've done, if I have a business plan for 2021, so much has already happened. And some of my ideas have worked and some haven't worked. Markets have moved. I've gotten new perspective. And so I just go back constantly and say, the things that I wanted to do to change my business, am I achieving that? If I needed to do something 10 times, am I halfway through the year having done it twice, in which case I need a new idea? Or am I halfway through the year and I've done it 20 times and it was a better idea than I thought, in which case maybe I scrap another thing and like lean all the way into that strategy. So sometimes that just like the boring stuff of just taking out your calculator and saying, is this going to work? And am I going to be satisfied with it? And do I have the right clients? And do my clients care about the way I'm trying to do this? So I think it can be simpler.
I like the approach where you were talking, an iterative and experimental approach to innovating and trying to find out what's going to work for your business, and a recognition. I like the pencil idea a recognition that it's going to change. Because look, this sounds crazy to people, but like your iPhone has been around for less than 15 years, right? The first iPhone came out in 2007, was announced, right? So like, and look at how much our society has changed in that, whatever, 14 years we're into iPhone life, right?
Yeah.
It's radical. It's just dramatic, like to the point of like, I'm almost, this close to being able to like literally not even think about bringing a wallet with me when I go anywhere, because I can pay with my phone. States are now authorizing IDs on the phone. My state, here, Texas, doesn't have it yet, but it's coming. Heck, last night we were talking about my daughter's basketball game before we clicked record. Finally, we're able to buy our tickets ahead of time and have them on our phone. When we walk into the game, just show your phone and you can have your ticket, right? So this is just wonderful stuff. But that just think about that. And then 13, 14 years, that's what's happened. So the notion that you're going to, as an advisor, that you have to get it all figured out and this is a permanent stamp of foreverness is crazy, right? Like, innovate. And what
you also talked about just now is like this adoption concept of like, I was just thinking as you were talking to when the first iPhones came out, I'm like, who in their right mind spends that much money on a phone?
Right.
That's crazy.
It was like $600 at the time too, right?
You know, if I leave my phone 10 feet away from me, I start to get palpitations. You know, I can't live without it. And so I do think that we sometimes project these things on like generations, you know, people of this age like this, and they only want that. Younger people don't want advisors. They want this robo thing because they're tech savvy.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you peel back the onion on it, it's not, I haven't found it to be true. So I think so much effort, whether it's by age or gender or profession or geography, there's so many ways that people slice and dice the possible client base. And I just find it to be so inexact. I can't get good math to tell me what to do with that. So I think you have to by definition embrace everything. So robo advising, to me, the value of it is it democratizes wealth management in a way. So there's advice and there's knowledge that's available to people now for a cost that is appropriate for them, that is in a scale that's appropriate for the firm that's providing it. And they can evolve with it. And maybe you get to a point where your life is complicated enough where you're like, I don't know what to do. I just had this conversation with a client a couple of weeks ago saying, I feel it coming. My life is getting complicated. I'm starting to not understand certain things going on or not be able to keep track of it. And I've got young kids and I've got all this, I own a business. And he can see the train coming of like, so what do I do? And so the moment arrived where he was transitioning from a do-it-yourselfer to let's partner together. And I think that happens with a lot of people.
No, I 1,000%. And I've heard that, you know, for years, like the more complex you get, the more advisors you need, right? Like, you know, where you may want a financial advisor, you know, for just managing your assets, but at some point in time, if you start making a lot of money and have a lot of assets and you have a business, you're going to need a tax guy or a tax team, right? So you're going to need some other expertise coming to bear, and that just stands to reason. You know, one of the things you were talking about, the adoption thing, I think is worth kind of staying on for a second here as a mechanism for scaling. And you said something that I talk to people about all the time, and it's so wonderful to hear it coming from you, is that don't assume a resistance to adoption to new technologies, right? I joke about like my parent when texting and iPhone, you know, smartphones came out and social media came out. My parents are both kind of like, whatever, I'll call you or I'll see you in person. And now they're both like crack addicts. They text all the time. Like they'd rather text me than call me. They would rather Facebook message or whatever. And you might be pleasantly surprised. So from a scale perspective, imagine how much time it takes to prepare for an in-person meeting in your office, right? You have to, or which is actually very common for many advisors, is going to the client's home or the client's office to meet them on their turf. You may be pleasantly surprised to find out your clients are fine zooming it up. They actually might prefer it. Like, you know what? Can we jump on a Zoom? It's quicker and easier for me. I don't have to have any travel or intermediate prep time between meetings or what's going on in my life. I can do that type of thing. Or they may prefer sending you stuff digitally versus like paper, you know? So
that's another area where I feel like the answer we should be encouraging is yes to both, because the ability to pivot to Zoom and other formats over COVID was priceless. and we got our portfolio reviews done and we looked people in the virtual eyes.
Yeah.
But what we lost was, to me, some of the most important moments of a meeting or are like, let me walk you out.
Yeah.
And that's when you know what, I just didn't understand when Mike was talking about this, like, and some of the vulnerability as people process, or the personal thing they wanted to tell you, but not at the boardroom table with others or in the formal kind of dialogue context. There's things like that. And there's also, as you said, you go to someone's home and you see the pictures on their table, you see what their garden looks like, and they tell you why they care about these things. And if I have that, then at least I understand better. Yeah. So I'm the first client I ever worked with. I got to walk the factory floor of the family business they were selling, my high heels and a hard hat. I was like, this business is so much fun. And I learned all about it. And I understood then what they were talking about when they were so nervous. Everyone's like, oh, this is amazing. They're getting all this money. I'm like, yeah, but this is a 4-generation business that's being sold. They've never had liquidity before. They're terrified of ruining their grandchildren and giving up this rhythm that's existed in the family for decades. So the sensitivity you build through that, you're not going to get.
Yeah. No, you know what? It's 100% accurate. It's that's a good point. Like, it doesn't have to be all one way or the other. Flexibility in your business. I think that's probably what we actually just landed on here, is like, have some flexibility and be willing to tinker with things, right? So you may have some clients who want to do in-person meetings, and heck, you may actually have an offering where, hey, listen, we have a light offering where below a certain asset level or below a certain fee level, we can do Zoom only. Because, by the way, people are getting comfortable with that. I'm not sure if you've noticed this. If you subscribe to online services, any type of SaaS-based solution for your personal life or your business, and we use a lot of them here in our business, where some of these service levels, you get your silver, gold, and platinum. At the platinum level, you get 24/7 phone support, right? Immediate phone support. At the silver level, it's 24-hour email with a 24-hour reply time or something like that. Like, in other words, you can charge more for higher quality service, just like an airline can charge more for first class seating or business class seating.
Right.
There's reasons why people are willing to pay more for that.
I think you also get what you were saying before, is like, you might not call the doctor for the small thing, but maybe you would do a 15-minute like telehealth checkup rather than making an appointment, dragging in, worrying about your copay and all the other intangibles. I have a kid in college who's not able to get rid of a cough, which I think is more of a lifestyle choice, but being a college kid, but he's just signed up for the telehealth thing and had a 10-minute conversation, and they're like, yeah, get some sleep, drink some tea, you're fine. And I was like, great. He's happy. I'm happy. And it didn't require any other infrastructure. So I think maybe you get more information if you allow like snippets rather than a 2-hour portfolio review is the only option on the table. So,
and you just hit on something else. This conversation, by the way, this is what I love about we're going in different directions that I didn't expect going, and it's all incredibly valuable. That's why I always say, like, these are conversation starters. These is not a script when I said this stuff out. The approachability, right? You just described something that I think is really important for advisors to examine. Your clients sometimes feel like they are going to bother you if they reach out to talk about something. They feel like even though they're paying you, you will be, the number of times I've had clients going, hey, sorry to bother you, but I have a question. Sorry to bother you. Like, I work for you. You're not bothering me, right? But that's in their mind. We are trained society-wise in a weird way to, like, if I have to call somebody on the phone, I'm interrupting them, I'm bothering them or whatever, right? And so by creating a mechanism in your business where, hey, this isn't easy. If you have a quick question, here's how we do it. Right. And it doesn't require a full meeting. Right. So you don't have to like book an hour to meet with me. You can actually grab 15 minutes and we can chat it up. Oh, you want to know like what to do in that little small account you have over here, or your kid wants to start investing. We can have a quick conversation about that. Super easy. I'll send you the paperwork, all that type of stuff.
I think it applies to internal conversation as well, because I feel like we can all only do our best jobs if we're transparent and really good about communicating with our colleagues. So like learning whatever their perspective is, brainstorming, having somebody to bounce things off of. And I have the same experience as a manager. with people saying, I don't want to bother you with this. And I've just told them I'm a grown up. I've been doing this a long time. Like, I know what I have in terms of time and bandwidth, and it's incumbent on me to tell you, I don't have time to focus on that, or there's a better person, or like, you actually should just be able to deal with that yourself. Whatever it is, that's my job to say,
Right.
but like, bring it on.
Yeah.
And we'll find the compromise place together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. And that's a really good point, because, we spend a lot of time on this show talking about team stuff, and how to manage a great team, not only because many of them are remote now, but as one of the things you pointed out, and again, you're crushing it, Pepper, with the transition stuff. This is the segue stuff. This is great, because this is actually where we want to go. And thank you for leading me there. You've done this before. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, we talk a lot about succession planning on this show. In part because, as I mentioned, Truelytics was founded on this thesis that advisor succession is one of the biggest issues facing the industry in the coming decade, right? You pointed out something fascinating in our prep call that I hadn't given much thought to, is that just as the advisor's firm ownership is important when we start to think about succession, we also need to consider the employees, the whole team's potential succession, right? Advisor firms are small businesses. Most RIAs, for instance, have fewer than 5 employees, like 3.5 advisors, maybe a couple of staff folks, right? They're really small teams. Even if they're managing $1 billion of AUM or more, still really small businesses, right? By every measure. So we need to be thinking about the succession readiness of the entire team, because you were talking about how important it is, like, what happens if, Joe, who's been, kind of the trader at the firm or whatever, and for the last 30 years, he's been doing all the portfolio rebalancing stuff and all that type of stuff. Also, Joe's like, yeah, I'm out of here. Like, whoops. Yeah. The asset just took a hit. So, what are your thoughts here on, kind of from the team level, making sure you're succession ready and that the team is strong for any potential transition?
There's 2 categories of people, if you will. There's the people like your proverbial Joe, who keep the lights on and keep the engine running and the client experience and all that. And I think there's this tendency, which is a good one and a fair one, to keep that lean and tight, because it's just sort of margin eroding to overstaff that. But one person leaves or doesn't perform or whatever it is, and I think you can also get trapped in talent that you don't have a lot of excitement for if you don't have the ability to withstand life without them. Sometimes somebody is better than nobody. Yeah. And so there's a lot of implications, I think, for not building enough. So what I've tried to do for my business is scale out over time, because I know that I've got, as I grow and I add expenses, and this is certainly true on the advisor level, if they're not coming in with a book already, there's a J curve. So I'm losing money on that person for a while. And if I'm putting too many expenses on my business, I'm just watching my margin, wither away. And so some of that's good. If it helps me grow, I can buy my way out of it. But I try to do a lot of forecasting in terms of how much room I have to spend, and then figure out what are my priorities. What do I need to spend on technology? What do I need to spend on some other block and tackle things? And then what do I need to spend on the people, and making sure that I know what's happening in operations and in client service and in accounting, and knowing who's at the kind of 90% capacity or over 100% capacity, and telling them transparently, there's 3 different roles we need to fill. I'm going to do this one first, this one second, and that one third. And here's why. So I need to know what's going to change if there's a reason for me to redo that plan, but this is my timeline. And that has been obviously subject to revision if the growth doesn't allow it, right? But telling people, I think, is key, and not giving them the impression that it's either carte blanche, we have plenty of money, we're going to hire anytime we need, and we can do it in a day's notice, because talent's really hard to find. If it was hard before post-COVID, it's absurd. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are having struggles with that. But also telling them, like, asking me doesn't mean that I'm obligated to do it. It just means I understand.
Yeah.
what the issues are. So I need that input if I'm going to actually manage the business in a responsible way. So on the advisor side, I think there's this assumption that like more is better, just go, go, go. And maybe that's true, like as a blanket statement, but all the variables underneath it are how good are your advisors that you're hiring? Are you hiring in scale, assuming that 50% stick?
Yeah.
I've always hired with a goal of 100% success, and it's harder to do. I think it's a better experience for the firm because you're asking people to train them and you're asking people to embrace them and have lunch with them and be their friends. And if they think the person might not stick around, nobody's going to even learn their name. So I want to go all in on these people and assume that I'm going to have a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 even, where I'm just negative on that. And so I'd hate to get to year 3 and figure out it's not going to work because that's just money I can never get back.
Right. It's so interesting thinking about the talent thing. You talked about the challenges with bringing people in or retaining folks during post-pandemic here. There's been anybody who reads any type of business press has seen the phrase "the Great Resignation." I think that's what they're calling it. They're terming it like this. It's and lots of people quitting their jobs. Do it for a lot of reasons, right? I'm sure some bosses were horrible bosses during the pandemic, and people were like, "I can't wait to tell you to go pound."
Super annoying phrase, though.
Yeah, the great resignation. I think the other, probably more logical explanation for it is like, listen, people woke up to the fact that they have options, right? That even if I live in a small town and this is the one shop in my town, I don't have to only work for somebody in my town. I can work for somebody all the way across the country. There's no reason. I've got Zoom now, right? I can work anywhere.
Yeah. It's that, but I think it's also the same thing we're talking about clients and just projecting on people what they care about or demographically what we think that they should care about. I think as managers, we have to be careful not to assume that everybody wants the same thing from their career.
Yeah.
And like, not everybody wants to make the most money humanly possible. Not everybody wants as many promotions as humanly possible. And if you are somebody who wants to have a certain lifestyle and there's a certain dollar value at which you say, my income is sufficient for the life I care about, then great. I should know that because I'm going to support you in that. I'm not going to make you uncomfortable by trying to constantly pull you out of your zone. And other people, it is the flexibility. It is the fact that they want to work from home 2 days a week. Like, great, let's talk about it. So understanding what motivates people, I think, is super important to retention.
Yeah. And I think
a lot of people told me that what they wanted was just to be heard. Yeah. They wanted to be engaged. And COVID, when this is the downside of, I think has been over discussed in the press, but when your employees are not there in front of you, there is this disconnect and people wonder, do I matter? Am I seen? Does anybody care about me? And so you have to find the balance of letting people live a life of where flexibility matters to them that is comfortable, but also not losing sight of the fact that you still have to put your arms around them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. It is interesting. It's, the old saying, and it sounds hokey, but it's like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I know it sounds one of those, it's kind of like, it's a folksy saying, but it's really true. Like, people need to know you actually care about them. And that's true for your clients. It's true for your employees. And I think, if you're thinking about succession or M&A activity of any kind, making sure your employee base is rock solid and including them in these discussions, like, because if Pepper, if you were coming to buy my business, I'd want to make sure that really early on, if I started thinking this might be a thing, like, okay, we need to get the team together because these people are going to be working together long after I exit. Right. So probably in most cases. So let's make sure that they're, and give them some level of input. Don't just tell them, hey, this is something that's about to happen to you. This is something that an opportunity that may be there for you. Because if you are a seller, guess what? There's lots of buyers out there. Lots of people want to buy your business, right? So you're going to have some options right now. So maybe involving the team would be a smart idea. Don't just surprise them with it.
Agreed.
So I want to talk about this. I can't even remember the specific context in which it came up in our prep call, but it was just something where I was like, I made a note of this. And so if I butcher the way I introduced this topic, bear with me here. But a recent study by Cerulli found that 40% of active financial advisors say they plan to retire by like 2030. And that makes sense. The average age of an advisor is around 60. And this is honestly, this is the first generation of what we call financial advisors. Like this career is new. 25 years ago, when I got my start in this career, we still had people calling themselves stockbrokers. They were brokers. That's what the job title was referred to. And sometime in the late 90s, it pivoted and people started calling themselves financial advisors more frequently. And then everybody became an advisor. They stopped becoming brokers. Nobody's called a stockbroker anymore. So it makes sense. We're about to see some retirements. People are going to age out. They're just going to leave. But when you talk to advisors, and I've heard this from several people, and it came up in our prep call, and I can't remember the context, but they always say, well, I get this 5-year time horizon. 5 years from now, I'm thinking about leaving. So, and you mentioned it at some point in time. So I'm like, why do you think 5 years is this magic number that people kick around for like major career moves or changes?
Yeah, I don't know that it's magic, but it's certainly a round number-ish.
Yeah.
It's intimidating, I think, to think in shorter term timeframes because it implies action that needs to be taken relatively soon. And 10 years is probably feels complacent, right? So I that's one reason why I like to have like a 5-year business plan for myself and for my company, because it's like a strategic vision. And then I can back into, so what should I do now? What do I do this year that gets me toward that? But I think people are just more open-minded. It gives the optionality to say 5 years.
Yeah. Kind of feels long enough. Like, oh, it's in the future. So I don't have to do anything today.
It's like just right.
Like I said, I feel like I fumbled the bag on this one a little bit, but I was like, it was just an interesting thing that popped in my head. So I wanted to make sure that I brought it up.
Yeah.
I know we're kicking for home here. We're getting ready. But another area that is passion, and we just talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to revisit the nuances of hiring, because it was something that, it really comes through when I talk to you that like, oh, you love this part of the business. You love talent. I think you're spot on. There is a war for talent right now, and it's going to continue. Smart people, high quality people are always going to be in demand. Now more than ever, frankly, especially as we transition the business from information scarcity days to like this is really going to be about people. So how should independent financial advisors, RIAs, and even broker dealers kind of adjust their hiring practices as we go into this new wave of like what the business is going to look like?
I don't love hiring. I do love developing people. But the funnel of finding the right people is, it's sort of a constant. Every day you wake up and you have to find more people to talk to because it's hard to have success because you need to like the person, they need to like you, and then it needs to be a good offer. There's just so many places that can just drift away. I've decided just the best thing for me to do is in the original conversation, I want to be super transparent about what I'm looking for, what kind of person is successful at my company, and what that implies for how they should be thinking about their careers. Like, so for example, like we are a larger in the RIA type space, but relatively small firm in the world.
Yeah.
And I want to grow. I have a lot of projects and I can't do them. I don't have a department that does projects. So everybody gets involved. And if you are an advisor who is working for a big bank or something like that, and you're thinking, I have enough experience, why is nobody listening to me about how this should work or how we could build that? I want to design the marketing materials. I care what's on, whatever it is. If you actually are that way, then like I'm probably going to ascribe value to that some others might not. If you want, on the other hand, to have someone buy your book, get paid your commission, and go hang your shingle in a few years somewhere else, that's just not my business. A lot of other businesses do run that way. So I need to be super clear about what it looks like so I get the right people, because I've found when I do that on the advisor side specifically, I end up getting people who are just like, they're not a little bit in, they are 110% in, and we all plan on going out with the retirement party.
Yeah.
So junior talent is a bit trickier because I think we know how much it takes to invest in them. we want to be certain that they really care about this and that they really want this job. But I remember graduating from college, and for several years after that, I didn't even know most of the vocabulary at all. So, and I didn't know what the other options were. So for me, if you ask me, like, do you really want this job? I'd be like, yeah. I mean, because I wanted to pay my rent.
Sure.
And I wanted to learn. And like, you seem nice and you seem like you're willing to teach me some things. So like, I'd love to do that job. Tell me again what it is.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, you have to take some risks on some of the younger people. And so there, I really hire for humility and intellectual curiosity. If you assume all the other kind of ticket to entry is right, like you're intelligent, you know, kind of carry yourself well, then I want you to like just be so curious that you want to learn everything, because then you'll know what you want to be when you grow up. And if you're humble, you're not going to mind that some of the stuff that's rolling downhill to you isn't exciting, but in exchange, I will teach you.
Yeah. I love it. I spotted this common theme for you and the team at Chilton there, which was, we want people who are willing to get out of their lane and be adaptive, right? And be kind of what we're talking about, like, you know, earlier about be innovative and experimental. We're willing to tinker with stuff and try new things, right? Because this business is changing rapidly. You're trying to grow rapidly, so you can't have somebody who's like, all I want to do is just come to work every day and do my little stuff, and then I'm out. That works in certain businesses, right?
The phrase I've hated all my life is someone says, well, that's not my job.
Right.
I like brings out my dark side to hear it. It just, I get it. And it may be true, but you know, like, let's help each other out a little bit. Like, I still fiddle with spreadsheets. I still edit PowerPoints, right? You know, because if it takes me 10 minutes, why am I going to send it all over the place, making somebody else do it just because I can? Yeah. You know, it does actually keep you grounded. If you try to do a little bit, like within what's appropriate in your day, you try to do a little bit of that stuff, because it does keep you anchored. There's something else I worked on recently, and I was like, this is ridiculous. This is hard. This seems so inefficient. I asked all the junior people, and they were like, yeah, that's how it works. And I was like, well, not anymore. Freaking fix it. Yeah. This is awful.
Yeah, this is terrible.
Like,
is this how you're spending your day?
You guys complain, and they're like, and they have such good attitudes. Like, we didn't mind. I'm like, you should. Yeah. Like, I can't fix everything, but that one I totally can. Yeah. So we got a software package, and I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that kind of work. You should always reach a step ahead, like do the work that's asked of you, of course, but like reach up. Yeah. And like, think, is there some way that I can pull the next thing, because you're going to make somebody else's day. And that process of moving the work through is, I think, what keeps people excited to show up in the morning. Yeah. Or at least keeps you sharp on what their skills are.
Yeah. And it gives it, give the person the opportunity to get rid of some drudgery crap work. Now, we all get comfortable in our thing, like, this is the thing I do every day or whatever. Like, this is my routine-y type stuff. But after a while, like, years can go by, and you're like, there's a better solution for that. You are like literally doing, I can't even think of a specific thing here, but like, you're doing something that's taking hours, where like there's a piece of software that can do that in 15 minutes and doesn't require as much human interaction, right? So that's exactly the process you're talking about, of like inspire, and that comes from you in a leadership position, like to inspire that in your team, to keep them, hey, don't just do it because that's the way we've always done it. Yeah.
I think you also have to know people, wanted to know, like, what, if they save an hour in their day, like, what would you suggest that they spend that hour on other than long lunch? So one of the people that in this conversation, I said, I've noticed that you have great ideas and you have a great way of verbally communicating, but when you send me things in writing, it doesn't sound the same way. So writing skills, super poor. So that is a really important form of communication that I think this is one that maybe has a generational tilt to it, where the art of writing letters, thought out emails, the written form has gotten so short and punchy. That's how my kids can always tell it's me texting and not,
because you use punctuation, teenager. Right? Like, I do that. My kids
I use
tease
full
me.
Sentences. I know. Yes. And they're like, that's not how it works. I'm like, oh. For me, it does. Yeah. But, just helping people round out the skills that they have.
This would be a good way for us to wrap it up here, because I don't want people to think like I'm too old when I drop this on them. But like, so I am, and
let's not end like fuddy-duddies, like old
no.
people
This
who
is
are like, why can't you write a good email?
No, this is an interesting thing where you take for granted certain things you learn, but on both ends of the spectrum, right? So I take for granted, and you just talked about like business writing. Like I actually had to take a business writing class early in my career. So I am the last generation of humans to become an adult before the internet existed. Right? So I graduated college. And the internet was not a thing. I got into the workforce.
Right.
I can remember when they gave everybody new computers that actually were all connected to the internet. You have this thing called email now. And you have a web browser on your computer. Like that actually happened. So I became an adult before the internet. But that's it. Like after anybody younger than me came in and the internet existed as an adult, right?
No, I'm in the same group as you. I also hand wrote out trade tickets.
Yeah. So I can remember and that's not to say like, things were better in my day, but what it provided us, because we were there at the early days and there was not an assumption that you know how to use this thing, they went overboard in training. Like you had so it was Lotus made this product called CC Mail. That was the email product of the day. Like it was kind of like the, Mail or Outlook of the day. And you had to go to training all week. It was like a 1 hour a day CC Mail training, learning how to, this is how you send an email. This is how you put an address in there. This is how you create a subject line. And then they had a business writing class, which they encourage people. And this is what business writing is. This is why you'd want to bold here. This is why you might want to use bullets here to call out information to make it easy for the person's eye to move down. And it was a really fascinating thing. And to your point, occasionally you see this is a great opportunity for developing young talent. Like teach them how to, written communication. Now, so much of our communication now is written in email, text, whatever. It doesn't mean it has to be quick. Yeah. Okay. It's like, no, that's okay. Thank you very much. I'll get back to you. That would be a more complex. And it sounds like that's too hard, but it's like, it lessens ambiguity. It lets the person know what you thought was important. It allows you to get like this. This is the piece of information that I'm looking for in response to you, right?
And you'd hate to be judged for it because it's not a value match with the person on the receiving end. So it's one thing you just don't know. The person who's reading your email, there are some people who don't care about grammar, don't care about full sentences and punctuation. And I think there is a population of that, and I don't judge it. Well, sometimes I do.
I'm totally judging them. Totally.
I know. I am a grammar person. But on the other hand, what if there's somebody for whom that implies thoughtfulness and education and intelligence and all that? You would hate to inadvertently give this impression of yourself that is probably not accurate. So I think that's just part of keeping yourself tight professionally and not missing a single opportunity to put yourself out there as the best possible version people can see of you.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
authentically,
authentically, exactly. Well, Pepper, this has been fantastic. I know I kept you a couple of minutes over time that we had budgeted for this.
No, this was really fun. I appreciate
you were
the time.
Magnificent. I'm sure some people are going to want to follow up with you. What's the best way if somebody's like, hey, I want to talk to Pepper. And by the way, Chilton sounds like an amazing place to work. I'd love to be under her leadership. What's the best way for somebody to reach out to you and get connected?
Email me, panderson@chiltontrust.com, or go on our website and linked our HR there, because we've got some open roles posted.
Fantastic. Well, great conversation. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge thanks to Pepper Anderson for joining us as well. I love the fact that she got her start as a financial advisor and is now in a leadership position there at Chilton Trust, because that gives her that unique perspective. As I said at the beginning of the show, she's kind of seen it all, and she's watching the industry evolve. And it was really just fantastic to hear her thoughts on industry consolidation and the need to scale, and even for some hiring practices and training practices for your firm that will help you grow as well. So awesome stuff. Thank you very much to you, Pepper. Okay. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and hit us up with your suggestions for guests or topics for the show as well. Love to hear from you. podcast@truelytics.com, or hit us up on the socials, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We're active on all of those things, okay? All right, that's it for today. Hope you have a wonderful day. Please stay safe and be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.